The dust had barely settled on the main street of Copper Ridge when rancher William Stone heard the angry voices coming from outside the general store. At 45, William had lived in this Arizona Territory town long enough to recognize the difference between ordinary frontier disputes and something more serious. The tone of these voices suggested real trouble. As he approached the crowd gathered near the store, William could see 3 boys, none older than 16, standing with their backs to the building while a group of townspeople confronted them with obvious hostility. The boys looked travel-worn and tired, their clothes dusty from the road, but they held themselves with dignity despite their obvious fear. "They accused us of stealing and threw us out," said the oldest boy, his voice carrying clearly despite the threatening crowd. "But we didn't take anything from anyone." The boy who'd spoken was maybe 15, with dark hair and intelligent eyes that showed both defiance and hurt. Beside him stood 2 younger companions. One appeared to be about 13, with sandy hair and freckles, while the third looked no more than 11, with the kind of serious expression that spoke of too much responsibility for his age. Store owner Marcus Webb stood at the front of the crowd, his face red with anger and accusation. "I saw these vagrant boys near my store yesterday evening," Webb declared loudly. "This morning, I discovered that someone had broken into my storeroom and stolen food supplies. These 3 were the only strangers in town. We didn't steal anything," the oldest boy repeated, his voice steady despite the hostile crowd. "We were looking for work, and when we couldn't find any, we were preparing to move on. We never went near your storeroom." "Then explain why you were lurking around my store after dark," Webb demanded. "We were trying to find shelter for the night," the middle boy spoke up. "It was getting cold, and we were looking for a place to sleep out of the wind." William studied the 3 boys carefully, noting their obvious hunger and exhaustion, but also their dignity and the way they stood together protectively. Something about their manner struck him as honest rather than deceptive. "What are your names?" William asked, stepping forward from the crowd. The oldest boy looked at him with a mixture of hope and wariness. "I'm David Miller. These are my brothers, Tom and Sam. We're trying to get to California, where we have an uncle who might give us work." "Where are your parents?" someone from the crowd called out. "Dead," David replied simply. "Fever took them last winter. We've been on our own since spring." William felt his heart clench at the matter-of-fact way David delivered this information. These weren't hardened criminals. They were orphan children trying to survive. "Mr. Webb," William said, turning to the store owner, "what exactly was stolen?" "Bread, jerked beef, some and goods," Webb replied. "About $5 worth of merchandise." "And you're certain these boys took it?" "Who else could it have been?" Webb demanded. "They're the only strangers in town, and they were seen near my store." William looked around at the crowd, seeing the kind of mob mentality that could quickly turn dangerous for 3 defenseless boys. "Has anyone else seen evidence that these boys committed this theft?" William asked. "Anyone, actually. Witnessed them taking anything?" The silence that followed was telling. The accusation was based entirely on suspicion and the fact that the boys were strangers, with no one to vouch for them. "That's what I thought," William said quietly. "Mr. Webb, being near your store isn't proof of theft, and being strangers and orphans doesn't make them criminals. You defending these thieves, Stone?" demanded Jake Morrison, one of Webb's supporters. "I'm defending the principle that people are innocent until proven guilty," William replied firmly, something this town seems to have forgotten. Subscribe to our channel for more incredible frontier stories. You won't believe how these wrongly accused boys prove their true character. Young Sam Miller, the 11-year-old, stepped forward with the kind of courage that only children sometimes possessed. "Mister," he said to William, "we didn't steal anything. We've never stolen anything in our lives. Our pa taught us that taking what doesn't belong to you is wrong, no matter how hungry you are." The simple honesty in the boy's voice was more convincing than any elaborate defense could have been. William made a decision that would change all their lives. "These boys are coming with me," he announced to the crowd. "They'll work at my ranch while we sort out this matter properly." "You can't just take them," Webb protested. "I'm not taking them," William replied. "I'm offering them work and shelter which is more than anyone else in this town has done. He turned to the three boys. Would you like to come work for me? The pay isn't much, but you'll have food, shelter, and honest work. David Miller looked at his two younger brothers, then back at William. Sir, we don't want charity, but if you have work we can do. I have plenty of work, William assured him. The question is whether you're willing to do it. We are, David said without hesitation. As William loaded the boys into his wagon for the trip to his ranch, he could hear the murmur of disapproval from the crowd. Most of the townspeople thought he was making a mistake, harboring potential thieves on his property, but as they rode away from Copper Ridge, William studied the three young faces beside him and felt confident in his decision. These boys had been judged by their circumstances rather than their character, and he intended to give them a chance to prove what they were really made of. What none of them could have predicted was that within a month, these same boys would have the opportunity to prove their worth in the most dramatic way possible, and that the town that had rejected them would come to depend on their courage and character. For its very survival, the accusations of theft would soon be forgotten in the face of heroism that would transform how Copper Ridge saw both the Miller brothers and the importance of judging people by their actions rather than their appearance. 1 month had passed since William Stone had taken the Miller brothers from Copper Ridge to his ranch, and the transformation in all their lives had exceeded his most optimistic expectations. David, Tom, and Sam had thrown themselves into ranch work with determination and skill that impressed William daily, but more importantly, they'd proven themselves to be exactly what he'd sensed that first day: honest, hard-working young men with strong character. The boys had not only earned their keep, but had actually improved the ranch's operations. Through their initiative and intelligence, David had a natural head for organizing work and managing resources. Tom possessed an intuitive understanding of horses that made him invaluable with the livestock. Sam, despite his youth, had sharp eyes for detail and had spotted several problems before they became serious issues. Mr. Stone, David said one morning, as they prepared for the day's work, we got a letter yesterday from our uncle in California. William looked up from checking his saddle, noting the serious expression on David's face. Good news or bad news? Mixed, I guess. David replied. He says he can give us work on his farm, but not until harvest season. That's still 3 months away. What does that mean for you boys? Tom stepped forward to join the conversation. It means we were hoping we could stay here until then, if you'll have us. We know we've caused you trouble with the town. You haven't caused me any trouble. William interrupted. The town's prejudice isn't your fault. And yes, you're welcome to stay as long as you want. Their conversation was interrupted by the thunder of approaching hoofbeats. William looked up to see a rider coming fast toward the ranch, and the urgency of his approach immediately put everyone on alert. The rider was Jake Morrison, one of the men who'd been most vocal in accusing the boys of theft. His horse was lathered with sweat, and his face was pale with panic. Stone, Morrison called out as he reined in his horse. You need to come to town immediately. We need every man who can handle a gun. What's happened? William demanded. The Rogan gang hit the bank about an hour ago, Morrison replied breathlessly. But that's not the worst of it. They've taken hostages and barricaded themselves in the hotel. They're demanding safe passage out of town, or they'll start killing people. William felt his blood turn cold. The Rogan gang was notorious throughout the territory for their brutality and their willingness to murder anyone who got in their way. How many hostages? William asked as he quickly saddled his horse. 8 or 9 people, including women and children, Morrison replied. Sheriff Bradley is trying to negotiate, but Rogan's not the negotiating type. As William prepared to ride to town, David Miller stepped forward with a determination that surprised both men. Mr. Stone, we're coming with you. Absolutely not, William said firmly. This is a job for experienced men, not boys. We're not boys anymore, David replied quietly. We're men who owe a debt to someone who believed in us when no one else would. Tom and Sam moved to flank their older brother, their young faces set with resolve. Mr. Stone, Tom said, you took us in when the whole town called us thieves. If that town's in danger, then we're going to help protect it. William looked at the three young men who'd become like sons to him over the past month, seeing in their faces the same courage and loyalty that had impressed him from the beginning. "This isn't a game," William warned. "The Rogan gang are killers. They won't hesitate to shoot anyone who gets in their way." "We understand," Sam said with a maturity that seemed far beyond his 11 years. "But if people are in danger, then we have to help. Subscribe to our channel now. The incredible plan these boys devise will shock everyone in Copper Ridge." The ride to Copper Ridge revealed a town in crisis. The main street was deserted except for armed men positioned behind cover, all their attention focused on the hotel, where the outlaws had taken their hostages. Sheriff Bradley was crouched behind a wagon, trying to communicate with the gang leader through a hotel window. "What's the situation?" William asked as he and the boys joined the sheriff. "Bad and getting worse," Bradley replied grimly. "Rogan's getting impatient. He's given us until sundown to provide horses and safe passage, or he starts killing hostages." William studied the hotel, noting its strong construction and limited access points. "Any way to get inside without them seeing?" "None that we can figure," Bradley admitted. "The place is built like a fortress." That's when Sam Miller surprised everyone by speaking up. "There might be a way," he said quietly. All the men turned to look at the 11-year-old, skepticism clear on their faces. "Sam," William said gently, "this isn't the time for—" "No, wait," David interrupted, studying his youngest brother's face. "Sam's got sharp eyes. What did you notice?" Sam pointed toward the hotel with the confidence of someone who'd learned to observe details that adults missed. "See that old storm drain that runs behind the buildings on Main Street? It connects to the hotel's cellar. Tom and I explored it last month when we were looking for shelter." Sheriff Bradley looked where Sam was pointing, suddenly interested. "Are you sure about this?" "Yes, sir," Sam replied. "The drain's big enough for a person to crawl through, and it opens right into the hotel's basement storage area." "Even if that's true," Morrison said skeptically, "what good does it do? The outlaws would hear anyone coming up from the cellar." That's when David revealed the tactical thinking that had been developing during his month of responsibility and leadership. "Not if we create a distraction," David said. "Something big enough to draw their attention to the front of the hotel while someone comes up from below." "What kind of distraction?" Bradley asked. Tom Miller stepped forward with a grin that reminded everyone he was still partly a boy despite his serious circumstances. "Leave that to us," Tom said. "We've gotten pretty good at being underestimated." What the Miller brothers proposed was audacious to the point of being reckless, but it was also the only plan anyone had that offered real hope of saving the hostages. As the sun moved toward the horizon and Rogan's deadline approached, 3 boys who'd been accused of theft prepared to risk their lives to save the town that had rejected them, proving once and for all what kind of men they truly were. As the sun began its descent toward the western mountains, casting long shadows across Copper Ridge's Main Street, the Miller brothers prepared to execute the most dangerous plan of their young lives. The hotel where the Rogan gang held their hostages stood like a fortress in the center of town. But Sam's knowledge of the storm drain system had given them their only chance to save innocent lives. "Remember," David said as he checked his borrowed rifle one final time, "we stick to the plan exactly. No heroics, no deviations. Tom, you know your job." Tom nodded, his freckled face serious with concentration. "Create enough noise and confusion to draw them all to the front windows. Make them think the attack's coming from Main Street." And Sam, the 11-year-old, held up the rope and grappling hook they'd fashioned. "I get the hostages down from the second floor once you've secured the first floor. I know which room they're in." William Stone looked at the 3 boys who'd become his surrogate sons, feeling pride and terror in equal measure. "You don't have to do this," he said one more time. "No one would blame you for staying out of it." "Yes, they would," David replied quietly. "We'd blame ourselves. These people need help, and we're in a position to provide it. That's what you taught us a person does." Sheriff Bradley checked his pocket watch. "Rogan's deadline is in 20 minutes. If we're going to do this, it has to be now." The plan they'd devised was both simple and desperately complex. Tom would create a diversion at the front of the hotel, using firecrackers and noisemakers to simulate an attack from the main street. While the outlaws focused on that threat, David and Sam would enter through the storm drain, with David moving to neutralize the gang members while Sam evacuated the hostages. Through the same route, William and Sheriff Bradley would coordinate the real attack from outside, timing their assault to coincide with David's signal from inside the hotel. "One more thing," David said as they prepared to separate. "If something goes wrong, if we don't make it out." "Nothing's going wrong," William interrupted firmly. "You boys have thought this through, and you've got the skills to pull it off. Trust yourselves." The first phase of the plan worked perfectly. Tom's pyrotechnic display at the front of the hotel drew immediate and furious attention from the outlaws, who assumed they were under assault from the street. The sound of gunfire and shouting from inside the hotel confirmed that the gang was focused entirely on the front windows. While Tom kept up his diversion, David and Sam crawled through the narrow storm drain, emerging in the hotel's cellar as planned. The building above them shook with the sounds of the fake battle being waged outside. "Ready?" David whispered to Sam as they prepared to climb the stairs. "Ready," Sam replied, though his voice shook slightly with the natural fear of an 11-year-old about to face armed killers. David moved up the stairs with the careful precision of someone who understood that lives depended on his actions. The hotel's first floor was empty, all the gang members having rushed to defensive positions at the front windows. Sam slipped past his brother and headed for the stairs to the second floor, where intelligence suggested the hostages were being held. His small size and natural agility made him perfect for the rescue operation. What happened next unfolded with the precision of a military operation executed by people far older and more experienced than the Miller brothers. David positioned himself to cover the stairway, preventing any of the gang members from reaching the hostages during the evacuation. When the first outlaw realized they were under attack from inside the building, David was ready for him. Subscribe to our channel for more incredible frontier stories. You won't believe the courage these young heroes show in the face of deadly danger. Meanwhile, Sam reached the second-floor room where 9 terrified hostages huddled together, watched over by a single gang member who was more focused on the noise from outside than on his prisoners. "Stay quiet," Sam whispered to the hostages as he appeared at the window with his rope. "We're getting you out." The hostages included Martha Webb, the store owner's wife, and 2 children who were younger than Sam himself. Despite his youth, Sam took charge of the evacuation with remarkable composure. "Mrs. Webb first," Sam directed quietly. "Then the children. Move quickly, but stay quiet." One by one, the hostages rappelled down the rope to safety, with Sam managing the evacuation with skills that amazed everyone involved. But the plan's most dangerous moment came when gang leader Black Jake Rogan realized what was happening. Abandoning his position at the front window, Rogan charged toward the stairway, where David waited. The confrontation between the 15-year-old boy and the notorious outlaw was brief but decisive. David had spent a month learning to handle firearms under William's tutelage, but more importantly, he was fighting to protect innocent people while Rogan was simply trying to escape justice. When the smoke cleared and Sheriff Bradley led the assault team into the hotel, they found all the gang members either dead or surrendered, all the hostages safe, and 3 boys who had transformed from suspected thieves into the heroes of Copper Ridge. "I don't believe it," Marcus Webb said as he embraced his wife, who'd been among the rescued hostages. "Those boys, the ones I accused of stealing, they saved everyone." William Stone looked at David, Tom, and Sam Miller with pride that threatened to overwhelm him completely. "How did you know the plan would work?" William asked. "We didn't," David admitted honestly. "But we knew that doing nothing definitely wouldn't work. Sometimes you have to take risks to protect what matters." 6 months later, the Miller brothers stood in the Copper Ridge town square as Sheriff Bradley pinned deputy marshal badges on each of their shirts. The territorial government had created special appointments for them, recognizing their heroism and offering them a future in law enforcement. But the moment that meant the most came when Marcus Webb stepped forward to address the crowd that had gathered for the ceremony. 6 months ago, I accused these boys of being thieves, Webb said, his voice carrying clearly across the square. I was wrong about what they took. They didn't steal anything from my store. Instead, they stole something much more valuable. They stole our prejudices, our assumptions, and our willingness to judge people by their circumstances rather than their character. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories of courage, redemption, and second chances from the American frontier. Hit that subscribe button now because these tales prove that heroes come in all ages and that true character is revealed in moments of crisis. As the ceremony concluded and the Miller brothers prepared to begin their new careers as deputy marshals, David reflected on the journey that had brought them from accused thieves to respected lawmen. Mr. Stone, David said as they walked back toward the ranch that had become their home, that day you took us in when everyone else called us thieves. Did you really believe we were innocent? William considered the question seriously. I believed you deserved a chance to prove what kind of men you were, and you proved that in the most spectacular way possible. They accused us of stealing and threw us out, Tom said, echoing the words he'd spoken that first day. But the rancher took them in and watched them save the town, Sam added with a grin. As they rode toward their future together, William Stone and the 3 boys who'd become his sons understood that they'd discovered something more valuable than gold. Proof that character wasn't determined by circumstances, that heroes could emerge from the most unexpected places, and that sometimes the people society rejected were exactly the ones it needed most. Your subscription helps us continue bringing these incredible tales of frontier heroism and second chances to life. Subscribe now and join us for more amazing stories that prove anyone can become a hero when they choose to do what's right.